Hi everyone. Welcome back to more Poems That Changed Me. Today's episode is the end of the semester episode. I have just completed teaching a class in the wonderful Honors College at the University of San Francisco. I was teaching a really cool class called Global Poetry that I designed a couple of years ago. The students were fantastic, even though the entire class was taught online. They were real troopers. Three poems seem to have been favorites of this particular group of students. Nazim Hikmet's Things I Never Knew I Loved, or Didn't Know I Loved. I always forget the title. I confuse it with my own, which I talked about here a few weeks ago. HD's Eurydice, I was very proud of that, which I talk about early on in this series. And then today's poem, which was a bit of a surprise, except when I remember back to my own undergraduate self, how much I love this poem. It's by Pablo Neruda, and it is the least creepy poem from his famous book, 20 Poemas de Amor y una Canción Desesperada, the 20 Love Poems and a Song of Despair. It's poem 20, most commonly translated as Tonight I Can Write the Saddest Lines. I'm going to read the English version, though I have the Spanish on the website. I think it's that way. W.S. Merwin's translation is the best version of this, and it's the version I think many of us know. Here's the poem. Tonight, I can write the saddest lines. Write, for example, the night is starry, and the stars are blue and shiver in the distance. The night wind revolves in the sky and sings. Tonight, I can write the saddest lines. I loved her, and sometimes she loved me too. Through nights like this one, I held her in my arms. I kissed her again and again under the endless sky. She loved me. Sometimes I loved her too. How could one not have loved her great, still eyes? Tonight, I can write the saddest lines. To think that I do not love her. To feel that I have lost her. To hear the immense night still more immense without her, and the verse falls to the soul like dew to the pasture. What does it matter that my love could not keep her? The night is starry. She is not with me. This is all. In the distance, someone is singing. In the distance. My soul is not satisfied that it has lost her. My sight tries to find her as though to bring her closer. My heart looks for her. She is not with me. The same night, whitening the same trees, we of that time are no longer the same. I no longer love her, that's certain, but how I loved her. My voice tried to find the wind to touch her hearing. Another's, she will be another's, as she was before my kisses, her voice, her bright body, her infinite eyes. I no longer love her, that's certain. But maybe I love her. Love is so short, forgetting is so long. Because through nights like this, when I held her in my arms, my soul is not satisfied that it has lost her. Though this be the last pain that she makes me suffer, and these the last verses that I write for her. Man, reading that poem throws me back to my undergraduate days. I thought this poem was so cool. And actually, in retrospect, it did change a lot for me as a poet. The first thing it did was it was one of the first poems I remember reading where the poet talks about writing the poem at the beginning of the poem. He says, tonight I can write the saddest lines. Write, for example, escribir por ejemplo, and sort of writes it out in quotes. So he kind of goes meta. I feel like this is one of the first instances of meta-ness that I encountered. And I thought that was so brave to sort of talk about the writing of the poem in the poem, to sort of indicate to the reader that the poem didn't just arrive in your brain and in your heart from overhead, but you kind of had to work at it. So that was really important for me. I also really love that line, love is so short, forgetting is so long. And man, my 21-year-old self just could not believe how deep that was. And actually, in retrospect, man, as you get older, you realize how prescient 21 or 22-year-old Neruda was at that moment. He was spot on. The other thing I love about this poem, and I think it's one of the things that so many of us love, is this contradictory impulse throughout. I no longer love her, but maybe I love her. I no longer love her, that's certain. But maybe I love her. She loved me, and sometimes I loved her too. That sense of trying to talk yourself into something or out of something. Um, I was really taken by that. Again, so many poems that I had read as an undergraduate were so certain about themselves. And I loved that this poem seemed to be sort of groping for some sort of understanding. Um, I think that Neruda is at his best in poems like this. When he sort of drops the macho act and kind of drops the pyrotechnics and just sort of lets himself be vulnerable. He lets himself sort of allow the lyric impulse to take over and just sort of go where it wants to go. This poem really changed a lot for me. And if you haven't read it, imagine being 19, 20, 21 and full of heartbreak. And I think it will change something for you as well.